So, Zuko here. Sorry about the video being a day late, not that I think anyone really noticed. So this month, instead of doing a wrap-up video, I decided I wanted to try doing a review because I have only read one book this month, so I might as well, right? Gotta try new things. So this month, the book I read is Away We Go by Emil Ostrovski. When I picked up this book, all I knew is that it was about sick kids and that it had the lowest overall rating on Goodreads out of all the books that I currently have put on my shelves there at 2.95. So I didn't really go in with high expectations, honestly. I just picked this book because it was short. So I was kind of reading this just so I could get rid of it and make room for books that seemed more interesting to me because I was kind of worried about the low rating, though I didn't pay a lot for it, so it wasn't like that big a deal if I didn't like it. I do want to say that there might be some minor spoilers, but I'm not here to like spoil the ending for you. So if you don't want to know anything about this book before reading it, feel free to not watch. I understand completely. And before we get into it, I just want to say that if you are at all triggered by mentions of sexual assault or suicide, that I would avoid this book because, like, I don't want anyone to go into this book and then end up hurting themselves or being triggered by anything that happens. There weren't any, like, explicit scenes of rape or anything in the book. There was some dubious consent in it, which was kind of They do take, like, the idea of sexual assault very seriously in, like, the school that this book is set in. It says that the only two reasons people have been expelled is for violent or sexual assault, and they do mention that they have a sexual assault hotline, I believe. Not like it's just full of sexual assault and that it's not treated as a problem, but it is, like, some dubious consent. So I just wanted to warn everybody before anyone read this book. And for suicide, there were a couple of mentions of suicide and people committing suicide and stuff, so if that really bothers you, please don't read this because I don't want anybody hurting themselves. Okay, so this book is about some kids who have this newish illness that's been around for like 20 years called the Peter Pan virus, which makes them die young, which is essentially all it does. The infected kids are then sent to these special schools so that they can be away from the general population and like try to lead a normal life. Most of these schools are incredibly underfunded, and it's just not a good situation because like there are so many of these sick kids and not enough people to look after them and not enough facilities for them. But there's this one school that is like really prestigious and stuff, and you have to be like super smart and stuff to get in, and that's where our main character is. Now in these schools, they're not allowed to have any contact with the outside world. They can't see their parents. It's kind of weird because I don't know any parents who would like stand for this, but in the past there had been parents like breaking kids out of these schools, and like it infects other people when they're out in public, so they don't want them out there. Though it can't infect like adults or anything. It's usually kids because it's the Peter Pan virus. And there was also an incident of a girl committing suicide because she was being bullied at one of these schools from people from her past school, like healthy kids, who were mad at her for like bringing that virus into their school, so she ended up killing herself because of the bullying, which is why they are not allowed contact with like people from the outside, because they don't want like the safety of these kids to be jeopardized. I mean, fair enough, I guess, but like I don't think that's the right way to handle these situations. The main character doesn't seem to remember his parents, and it's never explained why. There's some like vague mentions that like as the illness progresses you like lose your memories, but the kid didn't seem like he was like really far into the sickness. He just doesn't really remember them. I don't know if he's like repressed it or what. It's kind of weird, but whatever. Honestly, the disease itself was kind of poorly handled. It seemed just like a random plot point that wasn't really thought out because it never really did anything. It was more like a glamorous disease because no one really showed any signs of being sick. It wasn't like everyone was like throwing up or anything. I guess it was kind of an invisible illness, but it didn't really impair their quality of life until the end when it started to progress bad and like they would die. The main character, his only issue was that his skin was dry and like cracking sometimes. But it was always told that it was dry. He never was like shown putting lotion on or like doing anything to fix the dryness. One of his roommates is losing his vision, and the other girl they live with, get this, it's so sad, her hair is going gray. Like that's it. This horrible illness that's killing children, and the only symptom is that her hair is going gray. Let's take a moment of silence for this poor girl. The other thing that really bugged me, it was never explained how the disease started or what they were doing to combat the disease. They just seemed to round up all of the kids and put them in these schools so that they could kind of like live normally, but not really normally. Then eventually they were like taken out of the schools when the disease progressed bad enough. And part of the plot of the novel is that they don't know where they go, though a lot of them assume it's like maybe for testing, maybe their memories are downloaded, or maybe it's just hospice care because they're dying. Honestly, I really didn't like the way that the sickness was handled. I'm not sick, I don't know anybody who is terminally ill or anything like that, but like it just seemed like it was there for convenience of getting a bunch of kids together and making them think about death. If you want to read about, like, sick kids where it's not bad, just go reread The Fault in Our Stars. I know you've already read it, but, like, just reread it. Though it does help that cancer is, like, a real disease, so you can just research it instead of having to, like, make up your own, but I think that he really could have put more effort into thinking up this disease and making it believable and sad. So the book starts off with the main character Noah. He is in a very underfunded all-boys school with his friend Alex. Alex forces him to take this, like, IQ test so that he can try to get to the better school, and he gets in. And that's it. You never see Alex again. He's never really mentioned. It's like 13 pages of this kid. I feel like the whole beginning scene was, like, pretty unnecessary, honestly. I think they could have just skipped to the well-funded school and not had the little tiny bit of background on how he got there. Like, you could just explain it in the writing. It's fine, but whatever. I also, like, think Alex was a pointless character. He's mentioned, like, twice maybe, just as the main character's thinking about his past in the rest of the book. I really think that that effort could have been put into making the virus a bit more believable and stuff, instead of just this unnecessary scene about the school that Noah used to be in, but whatever. One of the things I liked about it, though, was that Noah was a queer kid, and I had no idea when I went into this. I was originally going to read Simon and the Homo Sapiens Agenda because I wanted to read books about gay kids, and then I found out that I had accidentally chosen a book about a gay kid, and I appreciated that because I wasn't expecting it. And I really want to read more stuff with gay kids in it because I am a queer kid myself, so I want to read more about people who are, like, in my community. I was honestly expecting, like, another boring hetero love story, and I was so glad that's not what it was. And not only that, but, like, his sexuality was, like, never mentioned as a bad thing. No one was like, oh, he's queer, ha ha ha. Like, anybody who knew, they would just be like, so chill about it. Nobody ever brought up the fact that he was gay, and I really liked that they seem to be in a point now where there's either more important things to worry about than how gay everybody is, or where it's just never was a problem. I like that because I'm tired of, like, the queer thing being the only main issue in novels starring queer people. He does end up with a girlfriend, but it's more because she likes him and he has this strong desire to be needed because he can't figure out why else he would want to, like, keep fighting and be alive. If he's not needed, then what's the point? Like, what is he doing here? That's kind of the motivation to not just give up on himself. But he does recognize that he feels a platonic love for her. He does cheat on her a couple of times with boys, and it's very much stated that he is having sex with boys. So if you don't want to read things with sex scenes, though they're not, like, explicit going into the details of the sex scene, if you don't want to read a book with sex scenes in it, totally understand. It was kind of uncomfortable for me too, but then I might not pick this one up. But he does cheat on his girlfriend, which is kind of eh. It's never played off like the greedy bisexual where it's like, but I want both. I didn't really know what his sexuality was. I thought maybe he was bisexual in the beginning, but he does state that he is gay. I would have preferred if there was less cheating, but what can you do, right? One of the things that I was like, kind of, I didn't need to read this. There was a lot of mentions of balls. By page 13, he had mentioned them twice. Once to measure an amount of time where he hadn't done something since his balls dropped, and once to measure the height something was. He was like, oh, the water is up to my balls. Now, I am a cis lady, so I don't know. Penis people out there, do you actually measure everything with your balls? Because that's kind of weird, but fascinating. Yeah, let me know, maybe? I don't know, that's kind of weird, but I thought it was weird to have mentioned so much. I found the main character Noah pretty pretentious at times. I think it was intentional. It was a lot. He was pretty annoying. I think that he thought he was funny. I think that the author thought he was funny. I didn't really think he was that funny, but, you know, he was an interesting character nonetheless. Also, he let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Twice. Again, I have never been sick or known anybody who was really sick, but I did think that they probably portrayed what a bunch of sick kids living together, knowing that they were all gonna die, like the way that they would act and stuff, because there was a lot of, like, partying, there was a lot of, like, sex, and it's never stated if the sex is, like, safe with condoms and stuff or not, but I guess if you're all dying and there's no cure, maybe you stop caring about that stuff. I guess that would make sense. There are mentions of condoms when it's a girl and a boy, because they don't want to risk pregnancy, because if they get pregnant, the baby will be born with this sickness and they will not live past a few months, so they kind of have to abort the pregnancy. Girls would want to use condoms, but I don't know, do guys just not care here? I don't know, it was kind of weird. I also liked that the male characters were allowed to, like, show emotion. Noah cried a couple of times and nobody was, like, insulting him about it or being like, oh, man up, like, they didn't care, it was normal. I think everybody was kind of in the same position, though, where they were all sick and dying, so, like, what's the point in pretending that you're cooler than everybody else by not crying? But they did show a lot of, like, emotion that I really liked. I honestly thought this book was written by a woman because, like, there were mentions of, like, the patriarchy and toxic masculinity and boys showed emotion, and you don't always see that in books written by men. And when I found out that it was not written by a woman, I was kind of shocked, but in a good way. I also liked that a lot of characters seemed to have, like, little quirks with their speech. Like, this boy Nigel liked to say brosif a lot, which was more than I ever thought I would read brosif in anything. This boy Zach liked to just throw God into sentences, usually when he was exasperated. And Noah liked to call people dear, which I thought was pretty endearing. No? Okay, I'll stop. Also, one time Zach's eyes were described as splash colored, which I just had to mention because I thought that was ridiculous. And I thought that the book had the potential to be a tearjerker, but I cry over everything, and I didn't cry during this book. Now, maybe I was just really tired, but I didn't find it super emotional, even though it was definitely sad. So if you don't like books that make you cry, I would not read this just in case. If you want a book about sick gay kids that has the potential to make you cry, definitely read this. All in all, I think I would give this book like a 3.5. I rated it as a 4 on Goodreads. It had a lot of flaws, but it also was, like, good to read. Like, I sat down and read it in one sitting, which I like to do with books anyway. It held my interest through the whole thing, and I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, judging by all of the terrible reviews. So a lot of the reviews were, like, really stupid things, like, oh man, I didn't know this was a book about sick kids, when, like, how do you miss that part? And people are like, I thought this was gonna just be a contemporary, but then they started talking about a virus, and it's like, okay, you guys knew less about this book than I did. Maybe you should have looked into it a little bit more. Don't be mad at the book because it's not what you assumed it was, and was a different thing, like it states in, like, the front cover. Let me just read the synopsis for you. First of all, right on the front it says, "Away we go, welcome to Westings, a school where no one lives to graduate." What did you think that meant? Did you just think it was, like, I don't know how you could be like, wait, this is this book about sick people? Like, no, this is a book where, like, everyone was just murdered. And the synopsis in the front is, all we do at Westings is make things up. Maybe aliens infected the world. Maybe Peter Pan virus says right there, is a punishment from God. Maybe we get downloaded into chips. Maybe they experiment on us like rats. Maybe they take us away to tertiary, is that how you say that? I don't know, I've only ever read that word. Centers, and give us incontinent support until we die. Or maybe they're all just stories. It says right there in the little description that this is about sick kids. So if you don't want to read about sick kids, and you want just like a normal fluffy contemporary, maybe don't read this. I'm just throwing that out there. That might be a good idea. So yeah, this video was long. It was probably a really not great review, but I am learning how to do this and to find my words and write notes about things, because I am the worst at writing notes, but I want to if I want to have like a video that is concise and clear and gets to the point. But yeah, I will see you whenever I do my next video. It should be coming out on Thursday as the TBR for May. Yes, May. So yeah, I'll see you whenever I do my next video. Ciao! Guys! You've been quiet all day. Can you leave? The answer seems to be no. Sabug, don't eat things off the ground! Spit it out, Sabug. My dog just tried to eat a stick that he found on the ground. How a stick got in my room, I couldn't tell you. But I'm just trying to film. Guys, leave me alone.